Obese girl was sold to pay her father's debt. Mountain man bet everything he owned to win her back. The autumn wind carried the scent of wood smoke and whiskey through the dusty streets of Deadwood Gulch, a lawless settlement carved into the Dakota territory where fortunes were won and lost on the turn of a card. In the back room of the Silver Dollar Saloon, beneath flickering oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on walls stained with tobacco smoke and broken dreams, a game of poker had been running for 3 days straight. Marcus Webb sat hunched over the green felt table, his trembling hands clutching cards he could barely see through eyes bleary with desperation and cheap rot gut. Once a respectable merchant in St. Louis, Marcus had dragged his family west on promises of gold and opportunity, only to watch his dreams crumble into dust and debt. His greatest shame sat in a wagon outside, his daughter Charlotte, 23 years old, with soft brown eyes that held more kindness than the world deserved, and a body that society deemed unworthy of love. "I'm out," Marcus croaked, throwing down his cards. "I got nothing left." Silas Drummond, the town's most notorious gambler and brothel owner, leaned back in his chair with a smile that never reached his cold gray eyes. Gold rings glittered on his fat fingers as he drummed them against the table. "Now, Marcus, we both know that ain't true. You got one thing left of value." Marcus's face went white. "No, anything but that." "Your daughter." Silas's voice dripped with false sympathy. "Pretty face on that one, even if she is carrying extra weight. My customers ain't particular. Some might even prefer it. More to grab onto." His companions laughed, a sound like gravel scraping across tombstones. "She's my daughter." Marcus stood, his chair clattering backward. "And I'm holding markers worth $3,000, Silas replied coldly. "You signed them with your own hand, Marcus. In this territory, debts get paid one way or another. Either you give me the girl, or my boys take her anyway, after they put a bullet in your skull. Your choice." Outside, Charlotte Webb sat in the wagon, her worn calico dress stretched tight across her generous frame. She'd heard every word through the saloon's thin walls. Tears streamed down her round cheeks, but she made no sound. This wasn't the first time her father's gambling had brought them to ruin, but it would be the last. She'd watched her mother work herself to death trying to cover his debts. Now there was no one left to sacrifice but her. The saloon door burst open, and Marcus stumbled out, his face a mask of shame and anguish. Behind him, Silas Drummond emerged with 2 of his hired thugs. "Charlotte," Marcus whispered, unable to meet her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I thought I could win it back." "It's all right, Papa," Charlotte said quietly, though her heart shattered with each word. She'd spent her whole life being invisible, being the daughter men looked past, the girl other girls whispered about. At least this way, her father might live. "I'll go." "Smart girl," Silas said, reaching for her arm. "Take your filthy hands off her." The voice came from the shadows at the edge of town, deep and rough as a rock slide. Every head turned as a figure stepped into the lamplight, a mountain man, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in buckskins darkened with age and weather. His face was hidden beneath a thick beard and the brim of a battered hat, but his eyes caught the light like a wolf's. He'd been watching from the moment Marcus Webb stumbled into the Silver Dollar 3 days ago. The mountain man called himself Cole, just Cole, and he'd come down from his cabin in the high country for supplies. He'd meant to conduct his business and leave, as he always did, but something had made him linger. Perhaps it was the quiet dignity of the girl who'd sat in that wagon for 3 days, bringing her father water and bread, never complaining. Perhaps it was the gentle way she'd tended to the horses, speaking to them with more kindness than most people showed each other. Or perhaps it was simply that he recognized the look of someone the world had given up on, because he saw that same look in his mirror every morning. "Who the hell are you?" Silas demanded. "Name's Cole. I got a proposition." The mountain man stepped closer, and even Silas's thugs instinctively backed up. There was something predatory in Cole's movements, something that spoke of violence barely leashed. You're a gambling man, Drummond, so let's gamble. I already won, Silas sneered. The girl is mine. One hand of poker, Cole said, his voice carrying across the street. A crowd was gathering now, sensing drama. I'll stake everything I own, my furs, my rifle, my horse, my gold, against the girl's freedom. You win, you get it all in her. I win, she walks away free and clear, and you tear up Webb's markers. Silas's eyes gleamed with greed. He'd heard stories of Cole, the hermit mountain man who came down from the high country once or twice a year with prime pelts worth a fortune. Everything you own? Every last thing. Cole's jaw tightened, but we play honest. No marked cards, no tricks. In front of witnesses. The gambler couldn't resist. The girl was valuable, sure, but the mountain man's stake was worth 5 times what Webb owed. One hand, 5-card draw. We each get one chance to exchange cards. High hand wins. Cole nodded and turned to Charlotte, who stared at him in shock. This stranger was risking everything for her, the girl nobody wanted. Miss, he said quietly, so only she could hear, I give you my word. You won't go with him, not while I'm breathing. Something in his voice, rough with sincerity, made Charlotte's breath catch. No one had ever looked at her the way this man did, not with pity or disgust, but with simple human decency. They moved back into the saloon, the crowd pressing in around them. The barkeep dealt the cards with shaking hands, acutely aware that he held a young woman's fate in his fingers. Cole picked up his cards with steady hands, 3 of clubs, 7 of diamonds, Jack of hearts, Queen of spades, 2 of hearts. Nothing, not even a pair. Silas examined his hand and a smile played at the corners of his mouth. 2 pairs, 5s and 9s. All he had to do was hold steady or improve. Cards? The barkeep asked. 3, Cole said, discarding the 3, 7, and 2. The silence in the room was absolute as the new cards were dealt. Cole picked them up one by one. King of hearts, Jack of spades, 10 of hearts. Still nothing, not even a pair. His heart sank, but his face remained impassive. 1, Silas said confidently, discarding a single card. The replacement fell face down on the table. He lifted the corner, and his smile widened. Full house, 5s over 9s. Show your hand, mountain man, Silas said, laying down his cards with a flourish. Full house! Cole stared at his worthless cards. He'd lost. He'd gambled everything and lost. And now Charlotte would be dragged away to a fate worse than death, and it would be his fault for failing her. But then his eyes caught something. A slight irregularity in the way Silas had handled that last card, a practiced flick of the wrist that Cole had seen in 100 frontier card games. The replacement card had come from Silas's sleeve, not the deck. Interesting, Cole said slowly, his voice dangerous. Barkeep, how many cards left in that deck? The barkeep counted quickly. 43. Should be 42. We were each dealt 5, then I drew 3, and he drew 1. That's 42 cards dealt, leaving 42 in the deck. The color drained from Silas's face. You calling me a cheat? I'm saying count the 5s in this saloon. Cole stood, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. Count them slow and careful. Someone shuffled through the discarded cards in the deck. There's 6 5s here. Deck only has 4. The crowd erupted. In the frontier, card cheating was a hanging offense. Silas's thugs reached for their guns, but they found themselves staring down the barrels of a dozen rifles held by miners and cowboys who'd lost money to Silas over the years and were eager for payback. The hand is void, announced the town marshal, who'd pushed his way through the crowd. Drummond, you cheated. By frontier law, you forfeit the pot and the girl goes free. Cole, you keep your stake. Webb, your markers are void. Consider it compensation for attempted fraud. Silas Drummond's face twisted with rage, but he was surrounded and outgunned. This ain't over, he hissed at Cole. For your sake, Cole replied quietly. I hope it is. Outside, Charlotte sat in stunned silence as her father wept with relief and shame. Cole retrieved his horse and supplies, preparing to return to his mountain sanctuary. He'd done what he came to do, saved an innocent from a terrible fate. Now it was time to disappear back into the wilderness where he belonged. "Wait!" Charlotte called out, climbing down from the wagon with more grace than her size suggested possible. She walked toward him, her chin raised despite the tears on her cheeks. "Why did you do that? You don't even know me. You risked everything for a stranger." Cole shifted uncomfortably, unused to conversation, especially with women. "Wasn't right," he said simply. "What they were doing wasn't right." "I don't even know how to thank you," Charlotte whispered. "You saved my life." "Don't need thanks, ma'am. Just glad I could help." He tipped his hat and turned toward his horse. "Mr. Cole," she said, and something in her voice made him pause. "I have nowhere to go. My father's debts are cleared, but his reputation is ruined. No one in this town will do business with him. We have no money, no home, no prospects. If you'll allow it, I'd like to offer my services as a housekeeper. I'm a good cook. I can clean, mend clothes, tend to animals. I won't be any trouble." Cole turned back shocked. "Miss, you can't be serious. I live in a one-room cabin 30 miles up a mountain, no neighbors for days in any direction. It's hard living, cold in winter, isolated year-round. That's no life for a young woman." "It's a better life than what I had here," Charlotte said firmly. "Better than being invisible, or worse. I'm strong, Mr. Cole, stronger than I look. I can work hard. I just need a chance to prove I'm worth something." Something in Cole's chest tightened at her words. He knew what it was to feel worthless, to be cast aside by a world that had no use for you. He'd come to these mountains 10 years ago after the war, after watching his family's farm burn, after losing everything that mattered. He'd built his hermit's life as a fortress against further pain. But looking at Charlotte Webb with her brave, tear-stained face and her desperate hope, he couldn't bring himself to say no. "1-month trial," he said gruffly. "You don't like it. I'll bring you back down to the nearest settlement with enough money to start fresh. Deal?" "Deal," Charlotte said, and for the first time in years she smiled with genuine hope. Marcus Webb tried to object, but his daughter silenced him with a look. "You've made your choices, Papa. Now I'm making mine. I'll write to you when I'm settled." The journey up the mountain took 2 days on horseback. Charlotte rode behind Cole's supplies on a gentle mare he'd acquired from a trader, and with each mile they climbed, she felt the weight of her old life lifting. The higher they went, the cleaner the air became, the more vast and beautiful the world revealed itself to be. Cole's cabin sat in a meadow surrounded by pine forests, with a stream running nearby and a view of snow-capped peaks that stole Charlotte's breath. It was small but sturdy, built with careful hands, with a barn for the animals, and a smokehouse for preserving meat. "It's not much," Cole said, suddenly self-conscious about his rough bachelor's quarters. "It's wonderful," Charlotte breathed, and she meant it. After years in crowded, dirty settlements, this felt like paradise. Those first weeks were an adjustment for both of them. Cole was unused to company, to the sound of another person's voice, to sharing his space. But Charlotte proved true to her word. She was an exceptional cook, transforming his simple supplies of beans and venison into meals that made him close his eyes with pleasure. She cleaned and organized without disturbing his way of living, mended his clothes with tiny, careful stitches, and never complained about the isolation or the hard work. More than that, she brought something to the cabin that Cole hadn't realized was missing: warmth. She hummed while she worked, laughed at the antics of the chipmunks that raided the supply shed, and talked to the animals with genuine affection. Slowly, cautiously, she began to talk to Cole too, not prying into his past, but sharing observations about the weather, the wildlife, the changing seasons. One evening, about 6 weeks into her stay, Charlotte was preparing dinner when she heard a commotion outside. She rushed to the door to find Cole struggling to help a young deer with its leg caught in a trap, not one of his, but a poacher's trap left carelessly in the forest. "Hold her steady," Cole commanded, and Charlotte didn't hesitate. She knelt beside the terrified animal, speaking softly while Cole carefully pried open the cruel metal jaws. The deer's leg was badly injured, but not broken. Together, they carried the animal to the barn, where Charlotte held the lantern while Cole cleaned and splinted the leg. She watched his huge, calloused hands work with surprising gentleness, saw the concentration on his face, and understood something important about this man who'd saved her. He'd been wounded by the world just as surely as this deer, and he'd fled to the mountains to heal in solitude. "She'll need care for a few weeks," Cole said, sitting back on his heels. "You afraid of the work?" "I'm not afraid of honest work," Charlotte replied. "Never have been." Over the following weeks, they took turns caring for the deer, who Charlotte named Grace. As Grace healed and grew stronger, something shifted between Cole and Charlotte. The walls Cole had built so carefully around his heart began to crack. He found himself watching Charlotte as she worked, noticing things he'd trained himself not to see in people: the way sunlight caught in her brown hair, the music of her laughter, the surprising grace in her movements despite her size. He noticed how she never spoke ill of anyone, how she found beauty in small things, how her gentleness extended to every living creature. Charlotte, for her part, was falling in love. She'd never expected to feel this way about anyone, had convinced herself that love was for other, more beautiful girls. But Cole made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. He didn't look past her or through her. He saw her, really saw her, and more miraculously, he seemed to value what he saw. Winter came early that year, trapping them in the cabin for days at a time during heavy snows. They settled into a comfortable routine of shared chores and quiet evenings by the fire. Cole began to tell her stories of his life, his childhood in Virginia, the war that had scarred him inside and out, the slow healing he'd found in these mountains. Charlotte shared her own stories, the mother she'd lost, the father she'd tried so hard to help, the loneliness of being the girl nobody wanted. "I wanted you," Cole said one evening, the words escaping before he could stop them. "That day in Deadwood, I wanted to save you, not out of pity, but because I saw something in you, something strong and good and worth saving." Charlotte's breath caught. "Cole, I know I got no right," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm just a mountain man, living rough, no education, no prospects. You're young and kind, and deserve better than I could ever give you. But Charlotte, these past months with you have been the happiest I've had in 10 years. You brought light back into my life when I thought I'd live and die in darkness." Charlotte stood and crossed to where he sat by the fire. She took his weathered hands in hers, marveling at how perfectly they fit. "Cole, look at me. Really look at me." He did, his eyes meeting hers with painful honesty. "I'm not the girl anyone wants," Charlotte said softly. "I'm fat. I'm plain. I have no dowry, no prospects, no talents that any man would value. But you looked at me and saw someone worth saving. You've treated me with more respect and kindness than any man ever has. You've given me a home, a purpose, a reason to wake up grateful every morning. If you're asking what I think you're asking, the answer is yes. 1,000 times yes." Cole stood slowly, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "Charlotte, I'm asking if you'll be my wife. I'm asking if you'll stay here with me, not as a housekeeper, but as my partner, my equal, the woman I love." "You love me?" Charlotte whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I do," Cole said simply. "I love every single thing about you. Your kindness, your strength, your laughter, your courage. I love the way you hum while you work and the way you talk to the animals. I love how you never gave up, even when the world gave up on you. Charlotte Webb, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever known, and if you'll have me, I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." Charlotte kissed him then, her first real kiss, and it was everything she'd never dared to dream it could be. tender and fierce, gentle and passionate, full of promise and hope and healing. They were married that spring by a traveling preacher who came through the mountains. Charlotte wore a dress Cole had bartered for at the trading post, simple blue calico that she thought was the most beautiful thing she'd ever owned. Cole wore his best buckskins, freshly cleaned, his beard trimmed, his hair combed back. The ceremony was simple, witnessed only by Grace the deer, who'd recovered fully and chosen to stay near the cabin, the horses, and the vast Montana wilderness spread out below them. But as Charlotte and Cole exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for all their days, it felt more sacred than any grand church wedding could have been. "I, Cole, take you, Charlotte, to be my wife," Cole said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "I promise to love you, protect you, and cherish you. I promise to see you every day for who you truly are, the strongest, kindest, most beautiful soul I've ever known." "I, Charlotte, take you, Cole, to be my husband," Charlotte replied, her voice clear and strong. "I promise to stand beside you, to share your burdens and your joys, to build a life with you in this beautiful wilderness. You saved me, Cole, but more than that, you showed me I was worth saving. I'll spend the rest of my life showing you that you were right." Their first year of marriage brought challenges. A hard winter, sick animals, supply shortages. But they faced everything together. Cole taught Charlotte to shoot, to track, to read the weather in the clouds. Charlotte taught Cole to trust again, to laugh without reservation, to believe that happiness wasn't something that would be ripped away the moment he reached for it. Word of their story spread through the mountain territory, carried by trappers and traders. The tale of the mountain man who'd bet everything to save the obese girl became legend, a story told around campfires, proof that courage and love could triumph over cruelty and greed. But Cole and Charlotte cared nothing for their legend. They were too busy building their life, expanding the cabin, raising animals, planting a garden, and eventually welcoming their first child, a daughter with Charlotte's brown eyes and Cole's stubborn chin. 2 years after their marriage, on a supply trip to a settlement 30 miles south, they encountered Silas Drummond. He was no longer the prosperous gambler. His cheating had been exposed, his business ruined. He worked now as a stable hand, bitter and broken. He looked up as Cole and Charlotte rode past, Charlotte holding their baby daughter, both of them laughing at something Cole had said. The joy radiating from them was almost painful to witness. "You," Silas spat, "you destroyed me." Cole stopped his horse and looked down at the man who'd once held Charlotte's fate in his hands. "No," Cole said quietly. "You destroyed yourself. You got greedy, Drummond. You forgot that some things aren't for sale: human dignity, freedom, love. You thought you could own those things, trade them like property, but they're not yours to claim." Charlotte leaned down, her daughter secure in her arms. "Mr. Drummond, I'm going to say something you probably won't believe, but I hope someday you'll understand it. I forgive you. What you did was terrible, but it led me here. To this man, to this life, to this joy. I wouldn't trade a single moment of my life now for anything in the world. So despite your intentions, despite your cruelty, you actually gave me the greatest gift. You put me on the path to finding where I belonged." They rode on, leaving Silas staring after them in confusion. It would take him years to understand what Charlotte had meant, but eventually, working in obscurity and humility, he would begin to grasp it. Some lessons come late, but they come nonetheless. Cole and Charlotte's cabin became known as a place of refuge in the mountains. Lost travelers found shelter there, wounded animals found healing, and lonely souls found friendship. Charlotte's generous heart made everyone welcome, and Cole's strength made everyone safe. They had 3 more children over the years, 2 sons and another daughter. The children grew up wild and free, learning to love the mountains as their parents did, learning that true worth had nothing to do with appearance or wealth or status, and everything to do with character, courage, and compassion. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole and Charlotte stood together on the ridge above their cabin, watching the sunset paint the peaks with fire and gold. Their children played below, their laughter floating up on the evening breeze. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked, pulling Charlotte close. "This life. Sometimes I think about what you gave up. Civilization, society, the chance at an easier life." Charlotte turned to face him, her hands framing his bearded face, her eyes full of the same love that had grown stronger with every passing year. "Cole, before you, I had nothing. I was nothing, or at least the world made me believe I was nothing. You showed me the truth. You proved that I was worth fighting for, worth betting everything on, worth loving. How could I possibly regret that?" "I'm the lucky one," Cole insisted. "That day in Deadwood, I wasn't just saving you, I was saving myself. I'd forgotten what it meant to care about something beyond my own survival. You taught me how to live again, Charlotte, how to hope, how to love." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky. Two souls who'd found each other against impossible odds, who'd built something beautiful from the wreckage of their pasts. Below them, their children called them home to dinner, and they went together, hand in hand, down the mountain toward the warm glow of their cabin windows. The story of the obese girl, sold to pay her father's gambling debt, and the mountain man who bet everything to win her back, became more than just a legend. It became a reminder that love sees what others overlook, that courage means standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, and that sometimes the people the world dismisses are the very ones who hold the most value. And in a cabin high in the Montana mountains, surrounded by the family they'd built together, Cole and Charlotte lived out the truth of that lesson every single day. That real beauty has nothing to do with what the world sees and everything to do with what the heart knows. Their love story proved that sometimes betting everything you own on someone the world has given up on isn't a gamble at all. Sometimes it's the surest thing in the world.